Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. A couple of weeks ago, we were chatting with Jake, and we've got Jake back again today. So hello, Jake.
Hi, Keith. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And we were talking about packing for Everest Base Camp. And it's actually, you'll be pleased to know, Jake, that it's actually been quite well received, that one. You've had quite a lot of listens on that one. So I think it would be a good idea, and we discussed it then, that we'd also do one for Kilimanjaro on packing for Kilimanjaro. So that's what we're going to discuss today. I've done Kilimanjaro a handful of times. You've done Kilimanjaro a handful of times, Jake. So I think we're in a good position to talk about what we need to pack in our bags to go and do a trip up Kili.
Absolutely.
So first things first, obviously, the first thing you're going to think about is how long you are trekking, because the various routes on Kilimanjaro are anything from, well, you can go from kind of 5 days is the quickest one, which we do that in 6. Or you can go up to 10 days. But our trips are either a 6 or an 8-day trip. So although the podcast for Everest Base Camp will have some relevance to it, obviously you're hopefully not going to be packing so much stuff in your bag as you would be on a Kili trek.
No, absolutely. And I think doing a bit of research into which route you're choosing to do before you come away, obviously, is going to help massively with how much you need to pack. Because it is the same weight limit regardless of which route you do. So if you're doing a shorter length of time, then you can either have a lighter bag or pack a few extra essentials. If you're doing a longer trip, then it's going to be slightly more similar to Everest Base Camps, where you're just going to have to monitor and work out a little bit more closely how many days you're going to be up there and what you're going to wear.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, when you are on Kilimanjaro, you are going to be carrying your day pack with you with the stuff that you need in it for that day. And then your duffel bag. And just remember that please don't take a duffel bag with wheels, because that's going on somebody's back. And I don't think you would like to carry a duffel bag with wheels on your back. So please, no duffel bags with wheels or no suitcases with wheels. So, something like a Patagonia or a North Face duffel bag or a mountain equipment duffel bag, one of those soft type duffel bags is what the porter is going to carry your kitting up the mountain. Now, each porter can carry 20 kilos, and they generally carry one person's bag each, but they've also got to carry their own stuff, and they might get given a little bit of food or some eggs or something to carry as well. So generally, depending on companies, you're normally restricted to round about 12 or 13 kilos is what you can take in your duffel bag.
Yeah, that's kind of like the average number. And like I say, you've got to bear in mind that that's being carried by one person plus all of their personal kit, because they will be following you up the mountain as well. So they're going to have to make sure they've got all the right equipment to make sure they can do it. And then all the extra bits, because they are going to be carrying food and supplies and cookers. So everything is very much being taken up with you. And depending on the route, that will also depend on how much extra equipment they're carrying.
Yeah, I mean, just as an example of the porter team on Kilimanjaro, like it roughly works out that if you're going with a group like we do, you're kind of going to be about 4 porters to every one client. That's how many people, well, guides and porters. So if we take a group of 16 on a Marangu route, we will probably have around 50 in our team, but they are not carrying any tents, any portaloos, because obviously the Marangu route, you're staying in the huts, you're not camping. So they've got none of that extra kit to take with them. But if you're doing like the Lamosho or the Rongai or the Machami, then you're going to have a much bigger team with you, because they are then carrying all of that extra kit for you as well. So, and that's a good point, because if you are doing the Marangu route, then obviously you are going to be staying in huts. So that is going to mean that you haven't got to take as much stuff with you, because you do get a pillow, you do get a mattress at each one. So you haven't got to take a roll mat or anything like that with you. And I do think as well, because you're in the huts, you could probably, and I mean, you can comment on this, Jake, in a minute, but you could probably take a slightly smaller sleeping bag if you're on the Marangu route.
Yeah, I would say you could get away with taking a less extreme, is how I would phrase it. You get sleeping bags that are rated down to different different temperatures, and they'll all have comfort levels and extreme ratings and things like that. The huts tend to be warmer. That's not to say that they're lovely and toasty when you're up.
There's no underfloor heating in them or anything.
There's no underfloor heating. There's nothing like that. It's not, the Marangu route is usually nicknamed the VIP route. And it does make a difference, because you do get a mattress to sleep on. You don't need to worry about roll mats. It is a little bit warmer, because you've got, solid four walls around you rather than just a canvas tent.
Well, and you've also generally got like 4 people sleeping in a hut, haven't you? So
yeah,
actually, in terms of that, just the body heat that 4 people generate, rather than having 2 of you in a tent, makes the difference, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit more spacious when you want to do your admin in the evening, sorting your kit out and repairing any blisters that you shouldn't have because you've worn your boots in before. But all of that sort of stuff, then yeah, being in the huts is a lot nicer.
Even drying your kit out, you kind of get somewhere to hang stuff, don't you?
Yeah, you can start. I've seen some really clever things with people making like makeshift washing lines and drying that out amongst the, between the bunk beds and things. So it's a lovely, lovely route to do, and it's slightly less of a logistical challenge for our local team. But you're only really going to be saving weight on potentially this, the extremity of your sleeping bag. They can get really expensive when you need them to go down to -20. So you can save some money there as well. You don't necessarily need to have it as warm. But yeah, also your roll mat and things. But everything else is going to be pretty much the same. What you're taking. Yeah.
And apart from, you're going to need 2 days left clothes as well, aren't you? Because that's a 6-day route compared to a 7-8 day Machami, or an 8-9 day Lemosho route. So you're not going to need so many pairs of socks or so many t-shirts in that one.
No, not necessarily. I think the other thing to note is, if people are listening and they're confused as to, I didn't realize there were huts on the mountain and things, it's only one route. So if you're on the Marangu trip, you're on that route, then you'll be staying in huts, usually 4 to a room. Sometimes you go above the dining room, which is actually a lot warmer. You get the heater where everyone's been eting and things, so it's a lot warmer up the top there.
It's a lot noisier as well, though.
It's a lot noisier, so we do try and avoid them, but sometimes you just got to make do. But then every other route on the mountain is camping. So that's the easiest way to double check, is if you're on the Marangu, you'll be in huts, and every other route will be camping, regardless of how many days you're on the mountain.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest difference, I would say, from Kilimanjaro to like an Everest base camp or a Toubkal trek is just the fact, on a Kilimanjaro trek, you are going through 4 different climate zones whilst you're on the trek. So packing for that is somehow quite difficult, isn't it, compared to...
It is quite difficult when you get to base camp, or as you're approaching base camp and you're on that trip. Then I usually say to people, the first couple of days are quite hot and dusty as you're making your way up to Namche and then beyond, and then it gets a little bit colder. You're going to be wearing usually the same clothes until those final 48 hours where you get to Gorak Shep, and it is much colder. But pretty much it's what's coming. It's going to be a little bit easier, and you've got warm weather, and then it just gets cold. But Kilimanjaro can be quite unpredictable, and you do have the 4 different climates. So you'll start off around Moshi, and that's all that's to be expected. And you can leave some things behind if you want to. But yeah, a pair of shorts and a t-shirt as we're walking around, and flip flops. It's all quite casual. And then when you get dropped off at the starting point, that's when you go into more of a tropical climate.
Yeah, you're in the rainforest zone, aren't you?
And that can be quite tricky for people who haven't experienced a tropical environment before to pack for, or to work out what they want to wear, because it is raining usually, or there is a higher chance of rain. So I would definitely, suggest expecting that in the first day. But it's also quite hot, so it's still warm. It's still quite muggy, so it's a little bit tricky.
It's humid and muggy, isn't it? And that's the problem. Is people take nice thick waterproofs with them that they're going to wear on summit night, and you're kind of in a short sleeve base layer and a pair of shorts potentially walking, and it's raining, and the last thing you really want to do is put your waterproof trousers and big waterproof jacket on to sweat even more,
especially if they're Gore-Tex. Now I would recommend taking those anyway, because they're really good as windbreakers. Now when you get
for the top, yeah, definitely,
when you're on summit night, those I would say make a massive difference in terms of keeping me warm, because as good as my down jackets are, when that wind starts coming in, which it can do, being able to stick on some Gore-Tex waterproofs makes a massive difference in keeping you warm. So a couple of ways to then cope with the tropical climate without going crazy and bringing loads of extra stuff. Some people just wear shorts, which is fine, because they're not, they're swim shorts, hypothetically, they're not really too fussed if they get wet. They want to make sure their boots, stay reasonably dry, but there's ways around that. You'd still have your super nice Gore-Tex layers for the top. Two of the things that I would then maybe suggest is, one, I've seen people buy cheap ponchos.
I've got a cheap plastic poncho that I stick in my bag that you then just throw over. It goes over your rucksack as well. And
I tell you what, they're brilliant bits of kit. It gives a bit of a Glastonbury vibe, but all of the guides will have them. All of the porters will have them. It's going to keep your bag dry. Even the bags that come with those waterproof sacks that you can put over the top, or covers, they're good, but they don't always do the best job. Whereas, if you can throw a poncho on over the top, that's gonna be really good. And the other one that Gareth and I do at base camp and sometimes on Kili, just buying a cheap umbrella. Maybe that's just the really Englishness in us coming out, but yeah, we'll go trekking and just buy a cheap umbrella, and that usually does the job pretty well.
Yeah, and if you haven't got a poncho and you get to the gate, whenever you're at one of the gates on Kilimanjaro, there are always people selling stuff at the bottom, the locals. And if the sun's shining, they'll be selling hats. And if it's raining, they'll be selling ponchos. So if you haven't taken a poncho with you, then you will definitely be able to get one at the bottom at the gate before you even start your trip.
Well, I think that's a really good point about buying things on the mountain. And that's something I was going to wanted to mention later on. But is one of the main differences between like a base camp trek and a Kilimanjaro trek. And we did mention this previously, but you can buy most things on the way to base camp at the tea houses.
In Nepal or in Kathmandu or in Namche
in Nepal, Kathmandu, all of those sorts of places. But also, places like Dingbashay, there's the opportunity to go shopping and buy snacks and things like that. So it's a bit more established, I would say. There's more resources for you as a trekker. Kilimanjaro is slightly different. Once you pass the main gate, that's kind of your last opportunity to buy those snacks and buy those bits of equipment. Our guys are really good, and I will say that is that and at the risk of you making a joke, I like to eat.
No, really?
No, I know. Oh. It's shocking because
you've changed since I've last trekked with you. Oh no, you haven't.
It was the jacket. I keep saying that. But one of the things so it was a bit of a worry for me was, okay, am I going to get fed enough? Is it going to be enough? And our guys are really good at supplying you with, loads of snacks and, great lunches, and they feed you really well in the mornings. They feed you really well in the evenings. What I would suggest though, is if you're a fussy eater or you're quite particular about what you like, or you just know that when you're a bit tired and hungry, there's a few things that you usually, go and reach for, make sure you factor that in before you start trekking, and make sure you've got those supplies.
Even sometimes with that though, before you've even left the UK, because you cannot buy Haribo and Kendall mint cake and those sorts of things in Moshi or in Arusha or wherever you're starting your Kili trek.
No.
So, yes, you can go and buy biscuits. Yes, you can buy snacks. yes, you can buy sweets, but if there's something that you particularly want, you're not going to find wine gums in Tanzania. So you might want to take those with you.
Yeah, funny you say wine gums. That's always my thing. Love having a bag of wine gums. The other thing that I forgot last time, stupidly, and I definitely paid the price for it, was sun cream. Make sure you get your sun cream over here because they will charge you a premium out there, and it will be a lot more expensive. But yeah, if you're after things like Snickers bars and Pringles, which tends to be like the main diet of a lot of hikers and things, then you can pick those up. And we do stop off at shops before we start our trip, so everybody will get the chance to supply if they need to and get any last bit.
And did you know, I don't know if you know this, but they've now changed the name of midget gems because they are my favorite like trekking snack.
Well, what are they called now?
Mini gems.
You see, this is I don't know. Well, again, you've just had your birthday. Happy birthday!
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I think that's a generational thing. I never knew them as midget gems.
Did you not?
No, I didn't.
They've only just changed them on the packet. They were always called midget gems up until very recently.
Well, yeah, that could be. I could be wrong. Then that could be just me not being aware of them.
But yeah, it's another one of those things that's changed their name.
I wondered where you were going with it personally. I wasn't really sure.
You just started talking about wine gums, and I just wanted to put my favourite trekking snack.
To be fair, and I found the ones that you can just get the black and red in a packet. Yeah. That's a game changer.
So packing in our bags then. So we're going to start off in the rainforest zone, and you are going to be warm. It is going to be humid. So you're not going to want any cotton. You're not going to want cotton t-shirts with you. You're going to want wicking base layer, short sleeve t-shirts that you're going to wear. Like for me, like on a Kili trip, when you're only trekking for 6 days, you've got 12, 13 kilos. I think you've definitely got enough weight allowance to have a clean t-shirt for every day, a clean pair of pants for every day, and a clean pair of socks for every day. And I know you'll want to be wearing hiking socks, but obviously what you've got to think about is you're not going to want 6 pairs of the same hiking sock if you're on Kilimanjaro, because like we're saying, you are going to start off, it could be high 20s, early 30s, really humid in the rainforest. And then you could get to the summit and you would have minus 15. So the temperature difference between day 1 and potentially day 4, day 5 is huge.
It is. And that is something to consider when you're packing. One of the key points that I say to people on our trips is a good layering system is about the best thing that you can do for yourself. You're right. You've completely got enough weight to have a clean shirt every day or have a clean top. Have clean socks and underwear and all that sort of stuff. Depending on the length of time, but really with the weight allowance and the time that you're up there, you could do that. What I tend to do is, and again, it's about being considerate of the people that you're either sharing a tent with or sharing a hut with. What I'll do is I'll have a couple of trekking outfits, and most of that's built on a layering
trekking
system.
Outfit. What you got? Do you bring a going out outfit as well, or like?
Well, no, but I bring like I'll bring, so when we arrive in camp, I'll usually I'll have like a clean set of camp kit. That's something I've started doing on the base camp trips as well. I'll have a nice clean t-shirt. I'll have a nice clean set of trousers or trackies if they're not too heavy, and that'll be lovely and comfy around camp. I saved the dinner jacket for the last night. That's
we always have a celebration meal. You've got to be, but you can leave that in Moshi though, can't you? You don't have to take that with you on the mountain. Like,
actually, that's something that I had somebody mention on a couple of our trips. They were like, it'd be good to remind people to take like a nice outfit in terms of just a nice top or a nice skirt or dress. Because on a lot of these trips, when we come back, we do like to have a nice meal and a bit of celebration and go for some drinks and things. And in Tanzania, it's amazing. They really do put on a good good show. It's always quite nice to have something to dress up in.
So for me on a Kili trek, I would take 2 pairs of shorts.
Mm-hmm.
I would take a thin pair of walking trousers, and I'd take a thick pair of walking trousers for summit night.
Mm-hmm.
I would have 5 short-sleeved wicking tops, and I'd have 1 long-sleeve one, which I'd used a base layer that I'd use for summit night, with a pair of thermal trousers as well. Now, I might not necessarily wear those. I'd make that decision when I get up to Kibo or whichever base camp we're at. Then I would have my waterproof trousers, my waterproof jacket. I'd have my insulated jacket. And then I would have a fleece of some kind. So I would layer it up that way. Now, for me, the important thing is I have got, but I never take it. I always take a fairly thin insulated jacket with me and layer it so I can get my waterproof jacket over the top of my down jacket. Because, like you say, if you've got a really good, nice waterproof jacket, it cuts the wind out. And what actually gets you cold, I always think, on summit night on Kili, is the wind chill if the wind is up. And if you cannot get your waterproof over your big, thick down jacket, you're not going to feel that benefit.
No, absolutely. And that'll save you weight and money as well. You know, when you're looking at buying those big down jackets for summit night, it can get really expensive. Whereas depending on how you do it, you want to be a bit careful with the quality of the kit that you've got. But I find that I don't need a really expensive big jacket. I've just got, you know, my thermals, my fleece, my lighter down jacket, then maybe something a bit thicker over the top, and then my waterproof jacket, and that's fine. But it's a bigger layering system. The other thing that people don't necessarily realize, so when we trek up to Kibo, hypothetically, I think it's one of the last trips that you and I did, very warm during the day, so you're usually trekking in something that's quite light, you know. So it gets a bit cold, you chuck a light fleece on, gets a bit windy, chuck a windbreaker on, that type of thing. We're then leaving about 11 p.m, between 10 p.m. and midnight. Usually that's kind of time frame. If it's windy, it's going to be freezing cold. It's usually quite cold anyway. But once you get to the top at 8 o'clock in the morning and the sun's rising, it is only going to get hotter and hotter. And what a lot of people forget is how hot it's going to be coming down. So again, if you've just got the one big jacket, you're going to find it's difficult to get to that really comfortable point. But I tend to trek with, especially on summit night, I'll be wearing everything. My bag will be almost empty. And then once we've summited, then all the layers start coming off. And as we get further and further down, you know, I mean, I've definitely had it in points where we've been coming down the scree slopes on the way back to Kibo, and I've been in a t-shirt.
Yeah,
and get really warm.
And I think that's the other key thing as well in it, is you're going to need, you know, you're going to need a beanie hat, you're going to need a warm hat, you're going to need 2 pairs of gloves on for summit night. You're going to want a thin pair of gloves, and then I always take my insulated mitts with me, because if you want to stop and do anything, you do not want to have your hands exposed. So you are going to want, I mean, to be fair, when I did it in September, I didn't put a pair of gloves on all night. And people said that their hands were freezing, but
I usually get pretty cold hands and feet. So that's something that I've always been quite conscious of. So I've got liner gloves, and then, you know, like a normal pair of gloves to go over the top of that, and then I've got big mitts that are easy to
so basically, when you take your mitts off, you're not going to want to expose your hands, and you're going to want to be able to get into your bag, get your water bottle out, because you're not going to be drinking out of a hydration pack on summit night, because the tube will freeze. So unless you've got an insulated tube, then you might be okay. But, you know, everyone had, freezing tubes last time. So you're going to want to keep your bottle in your bag. So if you're going to take a hydration pack with you, just make sure that you have got a bottle as well to use on summit night. You're going to want really good sunglasses. So you're going to want at least Cat 3, if not Cat 4 sunglasses, because the strength of that sun when you get to the summit and especially if there is any snow or ice on the ground, that bouncing back at you. And the other one that loads of people forget on summit night is like protection for your lips, like lip balm, or because they properly dry out when you're at those altitudes.
So lip balm is something that I will take on every single trip, because the change from going from the UK to a different climate, whether it's hotter or colder or more humid, for me, that's usually the first things that will start getting chapped up. But especially on those summit nights, it's potentially going to be windy. It's definitely going to be cold. You're going to want some protection. And then even just the sun, the extremity of the sun as you're coming back down. So good sun cream, good sunglasses. Try and get the wraparound ones, because what a lot of people miss is they'll buy good sunglasses, but the way that it will reflect off the snow, or depending on what time of year you go, bounces up. And that can start to give you a bit of a headache and cause some issues down the line.
What about boots, Jake? What do you reckon for boots for Kili?
Boots, I'd say there's two types of boots that you want to go for. I'm not the type of person that would do summit night in trainers or approach shoes. So I usually do the majority of it in a comfy pair of hiking trainers or approach shoes. I do most of it in them, and then for summit night, I've got a pair of boots that I'll chuck on, but I make sure I pair them up with a decent pair of socks. Now, whether you start wearing those boots, for ankle support early on or whatever, that's up to you. I think you're looking at, first of all, making sure that you've broken them in. So whatever it is that you're comfortable with. I would say a standard pair of, you could go leathers, but they're usually heavy. Like a standard pair of like synthetic hiking boots will be fine if you pair them up with a really decent pair of socks, and socks will make a big difference. Otherwise,
the problem is, like, for the first few days on Kili, you could walk it in a pair of approach shoes without any problems.
I usually do. I mean, if you're not used to being in those conditions, just be a little bit careful about your ankle support and things. So I would suggest for people who haven't, if you don't do loads of hiking and things, stick with boots from the beginning.
And I think, but I mean, I definitely wouldn't come down the mountain in a pair of approach shoes, just because of the amount of scree that you have. And you want a slightly, I mean, I always wear my boots and I put my gaiters on to stop any of the shingle going into my boots. But the number of times you'll slip over or roll over on your ankle or something, just having that extra protection there. But so
you and I have actually got different boots, haven't we? So I know that you've got a pair of the Trango towels.
I wear them now on Kili. I'll wear my what are they called? They are called Sportiva TX4 GTXs, which is an approach shoe, but they make a mid version of them, so it just comes over the ankle. They're super lightweight. It feels like you're wearing approach shoes, but you have just got that ankle support. And I've used those for a couple of times now, and for me, they are brilliant. I think,
because you used to wear the on a lot of your trips, you used to wear the B2s just because of how flexible they were in terms of you could put crampons onto them if you needed to. They are waterproof, but you found them quite comfortable to walk in. I bought a pair and they are brilliant. I did find it a little bit weird walking or getting used to it because it's got a stiffer sole.
The
last Kili trip that I went on, I made sure that I had a really good warm pair of socks. I just go to Horizon socks, and they've got like a good range of, the lighter pairs for wearing when it's a bit hotter, and then the thicker pairs for wearing on summit night. So I've got a good selection from them. But now I wear a pair of Scarpa Revos. They're just the most all-round boots that I found. I find them quite comfortable at the moment.
Perfect. Well, before we bring this one to a close, Jake, I think we've pretty much covered everything that you need to pack in your bag. Anything else you take? What's the luxury item you take?
Luxury item that I take, then, I would say for Kilimanjaro, because you don't need to take as much kit because you're not going to be up there for as long. So as long as you've got all the essentials, you should be well underway. I take a pair of trackies, tracky bottoms for the, especially on the Marangu route when we're hanging around in the huts and stuff. That's always quite nice. And I take my iPad. That's something that comes with me on all my trips.
My iPad would be my luxury item. You have got you get into camp fairly early.
You get to camp early. You get that time to recover. We have acclimatization days on all of our trips. So that's going to be a day where you will go up in the morning and you'll experience, some of the great things that are around. You'll get to go out and you will do a bit of trekking to keep those muscles warm, but you spend a lot of time resting and acclimatizing. So having a good book, pack of cards, for me, it's my iPad that I did try and claim was for work, but you're not having that yet.
Yeah, not having that.
Not having that.
Netflix downloads. The only thing we quickly forgot to mention was head torches. You will need a good head torch. You will be walking, obviously, around the camps in the evenings, but obviously for 8 hours, you are going to be trekking overnight on your summit night. So having a decent head torch with spare batteries, so you've got fresh batteries for summit night, are super important on a Kili trip as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So head torches 100% and spare batteries. That's something that people always forget. And I have had it where, it gets to summit night and everyone's going, oh, who's got extra batteries and who's got things like this.
And there is also no power on the Kilimanjaro trek. So if you are going to need to charge anything, so your phone or anything like that, you are then going to need to have a battery pack that's going to last you for the duration of your trip as well.
Yeah, and then I suppose just for me, again, a question that I get quite a lot from people in the build-up to these trips, if they haven't already got it, is day packs. We spoke about duffel bags, so your duffel bag will be carried by a porter. That's going to be limited to around about 12 kilos. But then you will have your day pack where you'll carry your first aid kit, any personal medication that you need, those kind of extra bits, and your water.
Like camera,
all that sort of stuff.
Maybe keep your waterproofs in there just in case.
Something that's going to be nice and comfortable to hike with. A lot of people go for brands like the Osprey or Low Alpine, what you and I have got. Make sure that it's big enough. That's one thing I'm going to say, because I have had people turn up with what looks like, their children's school bag. And it's just not quite going to cut it, especially for summit night when you want to decant all of those big layers into your bag. So something around, I would usually say 25 to 40, as more extreme levels on either end. If it's super small, you might be able to fit everything in, but just remember, do you really want to have everything?
It's when you're coming back down on summit night, when you're taking your waterproofs off and you're taking your big down jacket off because you've warmed up. If you've only got a 20-litre bag, you're going to have everything hanging off your bag, and then it's super dusty.
You might pack it perfectly in your living room and everything's got its place and it's all nice and organised. But having an extra 5-10 litres just for the ability to be able to rummage around or chuck stuff in and extra bits is going to be really useful. So just have a look at your bag, make sure that that's comfortable, but also big enough to carry everything you want.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, I think that pretty much covers packing your bag for a Kilimanjaro trek. And actually, I have got a day with the videographers coming up where I'm going to be making some new kit packing videos. So once I have done those, then hopefully I can attach the links to those to the show notes as well. I'll also add in a copy of our kit list into the show notes, with also a link to our ultimate guide to Kilimanjaro, which gives you all of the information you need for Kilimanjaro. So they will all be in the show notes. If you've got any questions, you can always email us at the Bucket List Company, and we are super happy to help. Even if you haven't even booked your trip with us and you'd like some advice, we're more than happy to pass on our knowledge to you as well. So, Jake, again, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
And thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And we will speak to you and hear from you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.